So greetings from the woods of Pennsylvania once again. As you can see by the title of the video, we have another Bigfoot story for you. Haven't done one of these for a while, but just recently, well, my birthday was just recently, and my friend John got me a book. I'll show you that book in a minute, but it has a Bigfoot story in it, or an encounter story in it. It's one that I've read elsewhere online, but the book has a longer version of that story. The one I read online was a pretty short blurb, so didn't feel like it was really worth the whole video. But in this book, it's kind of like the longer version of what happened up here. And where am I? Well, I'm in the thick of it, as you can see. I believe I'm currently on state game lands, but not too far from Weiser State Forest. I'm just down the mountain there is the town of Port Clinton, just north of Hamburg, in Berks County. So that's where we are. This story takes place actually on the opposite side of Port Clinton, on the mountain over there, but I'm kind of on this side. Just kind of worked out better that way. And if Bigfoot or whatever creature was encountered in this video lives on that side of Port Clinton, I'm sure he comes on this side too. But yeah, you can get up in the mountain on that side, but the main way to get up there is the Appalachian Trail, and it's one of the steepest sections of the Appalachian Trail here in Pennsylvania, so I was kind of like, I think we'll come to this side. Actually, I just camped not too far from here about a month ago. I think it was my last camping video, so that kind of makes the story a little bit more, brings it closer home too, kind of in the same area where this story took place. Alright, I'm going to find a spot to sit down and we'll show you the book and read you a story about what happened up here in these hills. This forest up here does have a bit of a creepy vibe to it. I kind of like it though. Just looking for a place. Did Bigfoot knock these trees down? Almost looks like a little dwelling right there, small one. Anyway, I'm not making fun of anybody. I just like to say things like that sometimes. I know people get upset at me. This rock looks like a nice place to sit and tell a story. And once again, please remember that these videos I make, they're not about proving or disproving the existence of Bigfoot. It's not about making fun of anybody's story. I know sometimes I poke fun a little bit, but that's just the way I do it. I've made a video in the past, the intro to this series, about what I believe. I'm kind of one of those people. I'm kind of in between somewhere. I'd like to believe, but I just kind of need more evidence for myself, so just keep that in mind. I'm not trying to disprove or prove these stories. It's about just sharing other people's encounters and hearing from you what you think about these stories. So let me show you the book first. Like I said, I got this for my birthday. My friend John got this for me. Pull out my bag here. It's called Strange Stories from the Skulking Stream, referring to the Schuylkill River. Paranormal Tales and Folklore of the Schuylkill River region. This is volume 1, called The Hidden Zoo, referring to number of different things found in the area. It's written by a man named Richard Bigg. So you can see the book there. So if you're interested. So tales of all different kinds of animals and things in the area, ranging from Schuylkill County, Berks County, Montgomery County, Bucks County, all that whole kind of southeastern Pennsylvania. So the story we're interested in is it's right here in the middle of the book on page 124, and this is from the year 1999. Like I said, this story did occur more. It was from southwest of Port Clinton, which is on the other side of Port Clinton. But I chose this side, like I say, for reasons I gave earlier. But this is a nice location to tell a Bigfoot story. So let's get into the story. All right, so I got my reading glasses on, so I can actually see what I'm reading to you. So it's a couple, not terribly long, but like I said, it's a longer version of what I found online. So this took place in 1991, probably in the fall. So southwest of Port Clinton, which like I said, more that way, but where the Schuylkill River winds to the mountain pass, the Appalachian Trail follows the crest of the Blue Mountain through beautiful, thickly wooded scenery that overlooks Berks County and Upper Topohawken Township. So yeah, the Appalachian Trail is just up that way too, on this side. State Game Lands 110 is in this section. In early February of 1991, 2 hunters were looking for grouse along the mountain ridge. The weather was cold and overcast. A foot-thick layer of snow blanketed the ground, and an additional inch of ice on the surface made walking difficult. That comes into play a little bit later, dealing with the creature. The men had to lift their feet up high and stomp down to break through the ice with each step. Near midday, the witness, who we'll call Dan, shot a grouse and called to his friend that he got it. His friend was 75 yards away and took at least 15 minutes to trudge up through the ice and snow. So emphasizing how difficult it was to walk and how long it took you to walk, because that's going to bring like how this creature handled walking through the stuff. After checking on Dan, this friend took another trail back toward the mountaintop road where they were parked. Actually, there's a mountaintop road right up here. Dan stayed where he was for a while, the clouds of his breath circling his face as he heard his friend's footsteps crunching off into the distance. So that kind of sets the scene for our story. You know, it's kind of a cold February day, about a foot of snow on the ground, covered about an inch of ice, so it is difficult to walk through that kind of stuff. You know, cold enough you can see your breath, out hunting with a friend. So keep that in mind. It's not quite like that today. It might almost be 70 degrees today, but keep that in mind as you're envisioning this story. And there's a hillside dropping off down, well, a steep slope dropping off behind me too. That kind of comes into the story too. But let's continue. Not sure why I took my reading glasses off, but anyway. So the next paragraph. This is where things get interesting, shall we say. After a quarter hour of silence, remember his friend just walked off, he heard his footsteps, Dan turned in the opposite direction from his friend and faced downhill along the crest of the mountain, so kind of looking down. In the distance, a dark figure was running up along the ridge. The figure stopped in a clearing about 100 yards away and seemed to notice Dan. So picture that, you're looking down, you see a creature running, it stops and looks up at you. It charged towards him, moving even faster than before. The strange figure was running silently, not crunching through the snow or anything, silently at full speed uphill as if the snow and ice weren't there. Dan froze, as you would as well. He knew he couldn't escape, as each step was a struggle. His light bird-shot ammunition, the ammunition he was hunting with, would be useless against an enemy that he could now see was massive and powerful enough to ignore a foot of ice and snow. Alright, so picture yourself in that situation. With no way to defend himself or escape, he thought he was about to die. The figure stopped about 50 feet away. Dan pointed his shotgun at it, hoping to intimidate the potential attacker. So at this point, he's not really sure what it is. It's just a massive figure. The figure didn't flinch, didn't make a noise, and seemed completely unfazed by having a weapon pointed at it. Now that it was close, my phone just went off. Now that it was close, Dan can get a better look at it. Dan could see that it was at least 7 feet tall and over 400 pounds. It was covered in long black hair. He couldn't see its face through the hair, but he couldn't see the face through all the long hair, but he could make out the shadow of its deeply set eyes staring at him. The creature had covered nearly 200 yards uphill through deep icy snow in only a couple of minutes and wasn't out of breath. In fact, Dan couldn't even see its breath in the cold air, because remember earlier he could see his own breath in the cold air. The tall, hairy humanoid stared at him, completely silent. Alright, so picture that, this creature's run towards you, now standing in front of you. And this brings up a topic I'm going to talk about in a future video, about sometimes when you're not sure what you're seeing, or you've only seen something for a little bit, how your mind kind of fills in the gaps sometimes. I think that's kind of what happened here. Dan thought it looked like the creature from the famous Patterson-Gimlin film. That's the video footage that everybody sees, like the iconic Bigfoot footage that was filmed. Was it the 60s? Two people were out. I forget where they were. Out west somewhere. They filmed that Bigfoot creature walking through the woods. That's kind of what set off the Bigfoot craze. So it reminded him of that. He had the impression that it was intelligent and that it had tracked his previous gunshots, yelling to see who was making a commotion on its mountain. So it feels like it was attracting him for those reasons. So yeah, so he's seeing something that he doesn't know what it is, and I think a lot of times in those situations, like I said, your mind kind of fills in the gaps. Let's continue on though. I got one more paragraph to read here. Dan and a hairy wild man stared at each other in silence. Dan calmed down, and as he realized the figure wouldn't attack. Maybe the creature was sizing him up, or making sure its display had the intended effect, the creature's display. But it showed no sign of fear. After a minute or so, it calmly turned back and descended the slope in the direction it had come. The huge beast paused and turned back to look at him once, twisting its upper torso rather than turning its head. then continued along the ridgeline. So imagine that. The creature finally walks away, then kind of takes one last look back at you before continuing on. I can kind of picture that in my mind. When Dan met up with his friend at the road, he explained what happened. His friend, who was 6 foot 1 inch tall and weighed 200 pounds, tried to run on the flat, even road to recreate what Dan had seen. After 3 steps, he fell flat on his face, which kind of proves how difficult it was to run in those conditions. Although his friend didn't believe Dan had seen what he thought he saw, he also didn't want to return to see the tracks. It's kind of interesting. He doesn't believe that his friend saw anything, but at the same time, he's kind of afraid to go back. So the two left. The witness said he believed the animal could see color as he was camouflaged in hunter's blaze orange overalls, and the thing had seen him from a distance. Dan would report his encounter to the Bigfoot field researcher in 2001. In his submission, he stated, "It scared the bleep out of me, and I wasn't sure what it was until it stopped right in front of me. It found me. I wasn't looking for it." Anyway, so that's kind of interesting. So what do we do with a story like that one? Like I said in these videos, I like to hear what other people think. You know, what could he be seeing? You know, there's always the option. I'm trying to get to a hillside down here. There's always the option that he made it up. To be honest, if you're a skeptic, maybe he just made that whole story up. But if there's truth to it, you know, on the other side could actually be some kind of creature, like a Bigfoot creature, or if it wasn't Bigfoot, if he saw something, you know, what was it? You know, what did he see? You know, that's the question. I'm looking down the hillside. Yeah, I'm just down from where I told the story, but you can see the hillside dropping off here. So picture about a foot of snow and ice, and you're this dude Dan, you look down that way, and there's a big humanoid creature way down there. It stops walking and it sees you, and it comes running up towards you with about within 50 feet of you, and just stands there and stares at you. Like he said, it was big, you know, taller than his friend, who was 6 foot tall and heavy thing, maybe about 400 pounds or so, and just staring at you. You couldn't see its face because it was just covered in long dark hair, just staring at him. And then finally just went the other way and then took one back, look at him once again. So what do you think Dan saw? Of course, remember, Dan's not his real name probably. What did he see? Was it something natural? You know, bears are black and weigh that much, but bears don't run on 2 feet. So that's what you saw. The thing ran towards them on 2 feet and stopped. You know, bears do stand up on their hind legs sometimes, but they don't run under 2 feet. Of course, the book didn't really mention that he saw it running on 2 feet, but I'm assuming that's what he saw. It's kind of interesting how whatever it was didn't make any sound either when it was running. So that's interesting. As I look down the hill, so I'm just trying to picture in my mind, even myself, what would I do if some creature just all of a sudden came running up here and just stood there and stared at me off at a distance for a little while and then ran off. You know, it's kind of hard to see down through there a little bit, you know, so I feel like once again, your mind kind of fills in the gaps sometimes as to what you're really seeing sometimes. And I just wanted to bring up the topic again of the whole paranormal side of the whole Bigfoot thing. I think when I did my first video on this, talking about what do I believe, I brought up that question. And other people brought it up too. You know, if Bigfoot isn't actually a real physical creature, perhaps he is something on the supernatural side of things. You know, maybe people are really seeing something. You know, I do believe in what I call the spiritual world. There's things out there on a different plane of existence. You know, I do believe that. But is Bigfoot something like that? Because the creature didn't make any noise. It didn't even seem like it was even breathing that hard or anything. So is Bigfoot something else that's not necessarily at the physical level? Anyway, just a thought. I'm not saying that that's what's going on, but it's just something to consider. I've listened to people talk about that on other sites too. Like perhaps. Anyway, because in a way, I'm just trying to fill in the gaps myself. A lot of times with these Bigfoot stories, these encounters, I often try to come up with a natural reason for what it is they're seeing. You know, what they're encountering. Is it just a person or a bear or something else? But this one's a little more difficult, to be honest, to come up with a natural cause for what he's seen. Okay, there's my backpack. Should make sure I came back the same way I left. Down there. I'll give you one more look at the book. title and everything if you're interested in this. Because to be honest, a number of the other stories I've shared with you, there is a potential natural reason for what people saw. Because most of those stories, they only see the creature briefly, you know, running through the brush or something. So like it could have been a bear. One time I figured maybe it could just be a dude wearing like a black hoodie or something. Because they see it for a moment and it's gone. And like I said, your mind kind of fills in the gaps. But this one's different because the guy saw the creature for quite a while. You know, he saw it running towards him. And then it was only about 50 feet from him. They looked at each other for quite a while. So it wasn't just a brief encounter, just a brief glance. You know, he saw the creature for quite a while. So that makes this one a little bit more difficult, I feel like, to come up with a natural reason for what he was seeing, if that makes sense. But as always, you can let me know what you think. What do you think of this story? Is it just a complete fabrication? Is it, you know, stark evidence for the existence of Bigfoot, or is it something else? What do you think? Is there a natural reason for what he saw? I do find it problematic though that they didn't go back to see the tracks. Like he said his friend didn't believe him, but they didn't want to go to see the tracks. I think that doesn't make much sense to me. Unless he was actually afraid of what his friend had seen, just didn't want to admit it. You know, guys don't like to admit that. But I feel like even so, they would have maybe gone back, I don't know, to see the tracks, or come back with a camera and take pictures of them or something like that. I know it's snow and ice. Maybe there wasn't, probably wouldn't have made for good footprints, but this kind of that part seems a little bit odd to me. Like if you saw something like that, I feel like I'd go back at least to somebody and try and get some pictures of the footprints to see the distance between the footprints and things like that. But it's definitely a lost opportunity there. If there's truth to the story, that's a bit troublesome, I think. But regardless, it's an interesting story. Besides letting me know what you think he saw, like if you think there's a natural reason for what he saw. Also, maybe let me know what would you do if you were legit in a situation like that, where a creature like ran up to you like that in the woods. What would be your reaction, you know? I'm kind of interested. I don't know. I think we would all, maybe we wouldn't be all that much different than Dan, just kind of stand there in like shock and not knowing what to do, you know, in fear of your life. Like, what should I do? Like, if you run, he's gonna get you. If you stand there, he's gonna get you. You know, what do you do? Anyway. Alright. I think that'll be it for this video, folks. Cabela's is just nearby, so I'm gonna stop in at the Cabela's store on the way home, right there in Hamburg. Alright, thanks for coming along with me on there. I know it's been a while since I did a Bigfoot video, but got this one in. And like I said, I'm planning on doing another one, but that one is going to be a little bit different. Like I said, I'm going to do more of a little bit of an analytical or philosophical approach to how people have handled these Bigfoot sightings over the years. You know, like going from thinking they're wild men to gorilla men to the whole idea that it's a Bigfoot creature. Because from reading this book and another book I have, there's an interesting pattern, I guess you could say, to the progression of our concept of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. So, kind of an interesting little theory. Anyway, but that'll be for another video. Alright, I'm rambling. So, as always, folks, thanks for coming along, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Stay safe out there, folks.